When my daughter said those words, my heart didn't break the way I thought it would. It didn't shatter into pieces or send me into tears. It just went quiet. Like a house after everyone has gone to bed. I remember standing in her kitchen, holding the cup of tea I had just made for her. Steam rose between us like a soft curtain, and for a few seconds, I thought I hadn't heard her right. But then she looked at me, not with anger, not even with hate, just with tired eyes. She said, "Mom, we don't need you anymore. You've done enough. It's time for you to rest." Rest? That's what she called it. But I knew what she really meant. She wanted her space, her life, her little family without me in it every day. I'd been living with her for 3 years since my husband passed away. At first, she told me she wanted me close. She said the kids loved having Grandma around, and that the house felt warmer with me there. But slowly, I started noticing little things, small signs that I was no longer needed. They stopped asking for my help with dinner. The grandkids didn't run to my room in the morning anymore. My daughter started sighing whenever I folded the laundry or cleaned the kitchen. And that day, when she asked me to rest, it was really her kind way of saying, "Please leave." I smiled at her instead of crying. Because I had already cried the night before quietly into my pillow when I overheard her telling her husband, "She doesn't understand boundaries. I just want our own life back." Those words stayed with me. They didn't burn like fire. They froze, cold and still, deep inside me. So when she finally said it to my face, I was ready. At least, I thought I was. I put my cup down gently, wiped the corner of the counter where a drop of tea had spilled, and nodded. "I understand," I said. She looked surprised. Maybe she expected a scene. But there was nothing left to say. Sometimes love doesn't end with shouting or broken plates. Sometimes it ends with a quiet nod and a gentle goodbye, because you finally realize you've been holding on to a place in someone's life that no longer exists. The first time I truly felt out of place was a Sunday morning. Sundays used to be my favorite day. It reminded me of the ones Henry and I shared: slow coffee, laughter, pancakes, the smell of syrup drifting through the house. So naturally, when I moved in with Anna, I tried to keep that little tradition alive. That morning, I woke early, as always. The sun was spilling through the blinds, and the house was quiet. I tied my old floral apron, took out the mixing bowl, and started making pancakes. I could almost hear Henry's voice teasing me, "Too much vanilla." "Sunshine," I smiled to myself, and kept stirring. I had just finished the first batch when Anna walked in. She was still in her robe, her hair messy from sleep. She froze for a second, looking at the kitchen counter covered in batter and butter.
"Mom," she said softly, "you didn't have to do that." I turned, still smiling. "I know, honey. But I thought it'd be nice for everyone to wake up to breakfast." She nodded, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of irritation. I couldn't quite name. "It's just, I already planned to make something different." The kids wanted waffles. "Oh," I said. "I didn't know." "It's fine," she said quickly, but her tone was short, clipped. "Just next time, maybe ask first." I nodded, feeling that familiar heaviness settle in my chest. "Of course, dear." It was such a small thing, a misunderstanding. But sometimes, the smallest cracks are the ones that spread the fastest. After that, I started noticing other moments, little changes that spoke louder than words. Tom, who used to pour me coffee in the mornings, stopped doing it. He wasn't rude, just distant. Always on his phone, always in a hurry. The grandkids Lily and Max began spending more time in their rooms. I'd knock gently, offering cookies or to read them a story. But I'd often hear, "Maybe later, Grandma." Dinner became quieter too. I'd set the table, but Anna would often take over, saying, "Mom, just sit and relax. You don't need to do that." I tried to tell her I liked helping, that it gave me a sense of purpose. But she would just smile politely and say, "You've done enough, Mom." Those words, they sounded so kind, yet they always left a sting. You've done enough. Enough. Like a book that's been read too many times and now sits forgotten on a dusty shelf. I began spending more time in my room. It was a small space at the back of the house, overlooking the garden. I'd sit by the window, watching the world move without me. Sometimes I'd talk to Henry's picture. I think she's tired of me, I'd whisper. But I don't know what I did wrong. He never answered. Of course. Just smiled that same warm smile from the frame, like he was telling me to keep going. Then one evening, things shifted again, subtly, but clearly. It was a Friday night. Tom's parents were visiting. They were lovely people, polite and well-dressed, the kind who never ran out of stories. I helped Anna set the table, folding napkins, placing the dishes neatly. When everyone sat down, I waited for Anna to introduce me as she always did, but she didn't. She just smiled at her in-laws and began talking about her job, her kids, their new car. I sat there quietly, smiling when someone looked my way. When Tom's mother asked, "Who made this lovely pie?" Anna said, "Oh, just something Mom helped with." Just something Mom helped with. Not, "Mom made it." Not Mom's famous apple pie. Just a vague acknowledgement, as if I were part of the background. After dinner, I offered to help clean up, but Anna said quickly, No, you relax, Mom. Go to bed. We've got it." I went to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at my hands. They still smelled like cinnamon and sugar. Hands that had cooked thousands of meals, bandaged scraped knees, washed laundry, wiped tears. Now, they didn't seem to have much left to do. Weeks passed, and things grew colder. Not cruel, just distant. One afternoon, I came into the living room while Anna was on the phone. She didn't see me. Her voice was low but sharp. "I just need some space, Tom. She's always around. I love her, but it's suffocating sometimes." I froze. I backed away quietly and returned to my room, sitting down by the window. That night, when she came to say goodnight, I smiled as if I'd heard nothing. "Sleep well, Mom," she said. "You too, sweetheart," I replied softly. Inside, I felt something fragile, breaking, not all at once, but slowly, like an old branch bending under too much weight. I tried to change. I stopped cooking without asking. I waited for invitations before joining family outings. I made myself smaller, quieter. Still, I could feel Anna pulling away, as if no matter how gentle I tried to be, I was still taking up too much space. One Saturday, she asked if I'd mind watching the kids while they went to a dinner party. "Of course, I'd love to," I said, happy to be useful again. I spent the evening baking cookies, reading bedtime stories, tucking the kids in. When Anna and Tom came back, they looked surprised. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Perfect," I smiled. They were angels. But Tom sighed softly. "The house smells like cookies again," he muttered. Not unkindly, but with that tone that said it's too much. Anna noticed and said, "Mom, maybe next time, don't bake so late. The smell sticks." I nodded again. "Of course, dear." I went to bed that night, wondering how something as sweet as cookies could turn into a problem. Then came the day I knew things were truly different. It was Anna's birthday. I woke early, made her favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with herbs and cheese, just like she loved when she was a girl. I even put a flower in a small vase on the tray. When I knocked on her door and walked in, she looked up from her phone. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, setting the tray down. Her smile faltered. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," I said softly. "It's your special day," she sighed. "It's just Tom and I were going out for brunch. You didn't need to make all this." "Oh," I said, my voice trembling just a little. "I didn't know." She looked guilty then. "I'm sorry, Mom. It's just, we had plans." "It's okay," I whispered. "You go, I'll clean up." After they left, I sat at the table, the untouched breakfast getting cold. I stared at the vase. The flower had already begun to wilt. That evening, when they returned, I told myself I wouldn't cry. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something painful. I wasn't part of her plans anymore. Not really. I was just extra. It's a strange feeling being in a home that no longer feels like yours. You move quietly. You take smaller steps. You wait for people to notice you, and when they don't, you tell yourself it's fine, because loving your child sometimes means learning how to disappear gracefully. It was early spring when everything changed. The days were growing longer, the air a little softer. The cherry tree outside my window had started blooming again, pale pink petals that floated down like slow snowflakes. It was the kind of season that usually made me hopeful. But that year, something in the house felt different, colder, even as the world outside grew warm. Anna had been quiet for days. I'd ask her how work was, and she'd just say, fine. I'd offer to make dinner, and she'd say, we already ordered. She was there, but not really with me. I knew something was coming. The way you can sense a storm long before the clouds appear. Then one afternoon, it happened. She came into my room. Her face looked tired, as if she hadn't slept well in days. She sat on the edge of my bed, fidgeting with her hands. Mom, she began softly. Can we talk? My heart sank. Those words, can we talk? They never lead to anything easy. Of course. Setting aside the sweater I'd been knitting for her daughter. What's on your mind? She took a deep breath. I don't know how to say this without sounding ungrateful. I smiled faintly. Just say it, sweetheart. She hesitated, looking down at her lap. Tom and I have been talking. The house is getting really crowded, and the kids are getting older. They need their own rooms, their own space. She paused again, her voice trembling slightly. We think it might be time for you to have your own place. I sat very still. It's strange how moments like that stretch time. How one sentence can make the world slow down so much that you can hear your own heartbeat. I didn't say anything for a while. I just looked at her, searching her face for something: regret, hesitation, love, anything that could soften the blow. Finally, I managed to speak. I see, I said quietly. You mean, you want me to move out? She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Not like that, Mom. I just think it would be good for you too. You'd have your own space again. You could make friends, join community groups, live your life. She said it like I wasn't already living one, like being part of hers didn't count anymore. I tried to smile, and where would I go? She looked relieved that I wasn't angry. I've been looking into some nice senior apartments nearby. They're beautiful, Mom, safe, quiet, close to us. You'd love it. I nodded slowly, even though inside I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. I understand, I said, trying to steady my voice. You want your space. I don't want to be in the way. Her eyes softened. You're not in the way, Mom. It's just, things are different now. I reached for her hand and held it gently. Things always change, sweetheart. I know that. She looked relieved, maybe because I didn't cry or beg or make it harder. She hugged me tightly and whispered, I love you, Mom. I love you too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. When she left the room, I sat there for a long time, staring at the sunlight on the floor. I had always known this day might come, but knowing something doesn't make it easier when it happens. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of all the little things, the sound of the kids, laughter down the hall, the smell of Anna's coffee in the morning, the way the house creaked at night like it was breathing. Soon, all of that would be gone. I started packing the next morning, slowly, carefully, not because I was in a hurry, but because I wanted to take my time saying goodbye to everything. Every item I picked up had a story. The quilt Henry and I made our first winter together. The old tea set Anna bought me for Mother's Day when she was 10. The framed photo of the three of us at the beach, Henry's arm around my shoulder, Anna's face sunburned from too much laughter. I wrapped each piece in paper, whispering little goodbyes as I went. When Anna saw me packing, she looked surprised. Mom, you don't have to rush. We can take our time. I smiled gently. It's all right, sweetheart. Once you know it's time to go, it's better not to linger. She didn't say anything, just nodded and left the room. The day I moved out, the house was quiet again, just like the day I moved in. Tom helped carry the boxers to the car. The kids hugged me goodbye, distracted, already running off to play. Anna stood by the doorway, trying not to cry. "You'll visit, right?" she asked. "Of course," I said softly. "I'll always visit." She hugged me one last time. "I just want you to be happy, Mom." I smiled. "I will be." Then I got in the car and closed the door. As we drove away, I looked out the window at the cherry tree. Its petals were falling again, one by one. I thought of Henry, of what he'd say if he were there. He'd probably tell me, "You did your best, sunshine. You gave them everything," and I did. When I arrived at the new apartment, the silence felt different. Not heavy, just empty, waiting to be filled. The manager, a kind woman named Mrs. Palmer, showed me around. The space was small, one bedroom, a little kitchen, a view of the park, but it was clean, peaceful. That first night, I sat by the window and made myself a cup of tea, the same kind I used to make every evening at Anna's house. Except this time, no one interrupted. No one told me I didn't have to. It felt strange, freeing and lonely all at once. I cried a little, not out of anger or regret, but from the simple ache of letting go. Letting go of being needed. Letting go of being someone's daily comfort. The next morning, I unpacked my things, hung Henry's picture on the wall, set my books on the shelf, placed Anna's old tea set on the counter. And for the first time in a long while, I looked around and realized this was my space. No one to please, no one to disappoint. Just me and the quiet. Later that week, Anna came to visit. She brought groceries, a potted plant, and a hopeful smile. "How are you settling in, Mom?" she asked. "I'm okay," I said truthfully. "It's peaceful here." She looked around the little apartment. "I was worried you'd feel lonely." I smiled. "I am sometimes. But loneliness isn't always a bad thing, Anna. Sometimes it's just the sound of your own heart reminding you that you're still here." She looked down, eyes glistening. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom." I reached out and touched her hand. "I know, sweetheart. You did what you had to do. That's what growing up means." For a moment, we just sat there, two women who had loved the same people, lost the same man, and somehow found our way through the ache. When she left, I stood by the door, watching her go. The apartment was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty this time. It felt like a new beginning, one I hadn't asked for, but maybe one I needed. The first few weeks in my new apartment were quiet, almost too quiet. I'd wake up early, as always, to the sound of birds outside the window. Instead of children running down the hallway, the air smelled different, more like the faint perfume of fresh paint and laundry soap. The first morning, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table with Henry's photo propped up across from me. "Well," I said softly, "we did it. New chapter." The first few days, I kept myself busy. I unpacked every box, folded every towel, arranged the furniture until it felt just right. But once everything was in place, the silence came back. Silence has a way of finding you, even when you think you've filled your life with enough noise to keep it out. In those quiet hours, I thought about Anna. I missed her voice in the evenings, the kids' laughter, even the small irritations, the slammed doors, the hurried mornings. I thought about how strange it was that a home can change so fast. One moment, it's a place full of life. The next, it's just a house with memories. Still, I told myself I wouldn't let loneliness turn into bitterness. I'd seen too many people grow old angry at the world. That wasn't how I wanted Henry to remember me. So, I began to build something new, slowly, carefully, like a bird learning to make its nest again after a storm. There was a community center just a short walk away. At first, I passed it every day on my morning walks, but never went inside. I'd see people chatting and think, that's not for me. But one day, a woman around my age called out from the porch, "You new here?" I turned and smiled. "Just moved in last month." "Well, come on in," she said, waving me closer. "We've got coffee and company." Her name was Helen, sharp-tongued, funny, and full of stories. She introduced me to the others, who loved knitting, and June, who never stopped talking about her grandkids. I was shy at first, but they made me feel welcome. That afternoon, I stayed longer than I planned. We played cards, laughed over silly jokes, and before I knew it, hours had passed. When I walked home that evening, the air felt lighter. Little by little, my world started to open again. I joined the knitting circle on Tuesdays, volunteered at the local library on Thursdays, even signed up for a gentle yoga class, though my knees complained the whole time. It wasn't the life I used to have, but it was mine, and in its own quiet way, it was good. One afternoon, while I was helping organize books at the library, a young woman asked if I'd mind reading stories to children. During the Saturday sessions, I hesitated, then smiled. I'd love to. That Saturday, I sat in a circle of little faces, their eyes wide, their hands clutching juice boxes. As I read Charlotte's Web, I realized something beautiful. I might not be needed in Anna's home anymore, but I was still needed somewhere. Afterward, one little girl hugged me and said, "You sound like my grandma." My heart melted. That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me all week. That night, I went home smiling. For the first time in months, the quiet in my apartment didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. Still, there were moments when the ache came back. Some nights I'd catch myself setting 2 plates at the table before, remembering there was only me. Sometimes I'd look at my phone, waiting for a call that didn't come. But pain, I learned, doesn't always mean something's wrong. Sometimes it's just proof that you loved deeply, and that kind of love doesn't vanish. It just changes shape. A few months passed before Anna visited again. This time, she came alone. When I opened the door, she looked older, not in her face, but in her eyes. There was a tiredness there I hadn't noticed before. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Anna?" I smiled, pulling her into a hug. "Come in." She looked around the apartment. "You've made it look beautiful." "Thank you. It feels like home now." We sat at the table, and I poured her tea, just like old times. For a while, we didn't talk about anything heavy. We spoke about the kids, her work, the weather. Then her eyes softened. "Mom," she said quietly, "I've been meaning to tell you something." I waited. "I didn't handle things right," she said. "When I asked you to move out, I thought I was doing what was best for everyone, but I've missed you more than I can say." I smiled gently. "I know, sweetheart. It's all right." "No," she said firmly. "It's not. You were always there for me, and I pushed you away." I didn't know how to balance everything. The kids, work, Tom, and you. I thought I was being practical, but I hurt you. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Anna, you don't need to explain. Every mother wants her child to grow into their own life. You just did what you needed to do." Tears filled her eyes. "You're too kind." "Kindness is easier than anger," I said softly, "and it lasts longer." She squeezed my hand. "The kids ask about you all the time. They miss Grandma's pancakes." I laughed quietly, even though they preferred waffles. She chuckled through her tears, especially because of that. We spent the rest of the afternoon together. No tension, no unspoken guilt. Just 2 women who had found each other again, not as mother and child, but as equals. When she left, she hugged me for a long time. "Can we make this a regular thing?" she asked. I'd like that, and we did. Every Sunday she'd visit, sometimes with the kids, sometimes alone. We'd cook together, laugh, share stories. It wasn't the same as before. It was quieter, slower, but it was real. I no longer lived in her home, but I had found my place in her heart again, and that was enough. One Sunday, as she was leaving, she said something that stayed with me. "You seem happier now, Mom. Freer somehow." I smiled. Maybe that's what happens when you stop trying to hold on to things that were never meant to stay. She nodded thoughtfully. "You've always been stronger than I realized." I didn't say it out loud, but in that moment, I realized something too. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "I'm okay." After she left, I made myself another cup of tea and sat by the window. The cherry trees outside were blooming again, just like the ones that had framed my goodbye months ago. Only now, they didn't look like reminders of endings. They looked like proof that life always finds a way to begin again. It's funny how life has its way of softening the sharp edges of pain. When you're in the middle of it, everything feels so heavy, so final. But when time passes, when the mornings turn into seasons, and the seasons into years, now when I wake up, the first thing I notice is the light through the curtains. It moves across the walls slowly, painting everything gold. It reminds me that I've made it through loneliness, through heartache, through change, and somehow I've built a quiet kind of happiness here. Still think of my old house sometimes. The laughter in the hallway, the smell of pancakes on Sunday mornings, the sound of little feet running down the stairs. Those memories don't hurt anymore. They just live in me, like soft echoes of another time. I see Anna often now. She brings the kids, and we sit together in this small apartment that once felt too empty, now filled with the sound of stories and laughter again. Sometimes, after they leave, I find a toy left behind or a crayon on the floor. I pick it up and smile. It's amazing how something so small can make a place feel alive. One evening, as I watched them drive away, my granddaughter waved from the back seat. "Bye, Grandma, love you." Her voice carried through the open window, and I waved back until the car turned the corner. When the street grew quiet again, I sat on the porch for a while, letting the cool air settle around me. The sky was turning pink, the first stars beginning to appear. I thought about how much had changed and how much I had changed too. Once, I believed my worth was tied to being needed, to cooking the meals, folding the laundry, babysitting, keeping everyone's life stitched together. But now I know. I don't need to be needed to be valuable. I am enough simply because I am here, still loving, still learning, still living. Some nights, I take out Henry's old photo and talk to him the way I used to when he was alive. I tell him about the kids, about how Anna's doing, about the silly things my new friends say at the community center. And sometimes I imagine him smiling, saying, "See, Martha, you're stronger than you think." He was right. I used to think strength meant standing tall, never breaking. But now I see real strength is quieter. It's in the way you pick yourself up when no one's watching. It's in the way you find joy again after heartbreak. It's in choosing peace, even when anger would be easier. If I've learned anything, it's that life doesn't end when people stop needing you. It just changes shape. It gives you space to rediscover who you are, outside of everyone else's expectations. I've met women my age who carried deep bitterness, children who don't visit, husbands who are gone, memories that ache. I listen to them and hold their hands. And sometimes I tell them, maybe it's time to build a new kind of life, one that belongs only to you. That's what I've done, and it feels good. My days are simple now. Morning tea, a walk in the park, volunteering at the library. On Fridays, Helen and I sit at the cafe across the street, sharing a slice of pie we never finish. We talk about everything and nothing, and laugh until our sides ache. It's not the life I planned, but maybe, in its own gentle way, it's the one I was meant to live. Sometimes, before bed, I stand by the window and look at the city lights. Each one flickers like a heartbeat. Quiet, steady, I whisper a small prayer. Thank you for what I had, and thank you for what I still have. Then I turn off the lamp, climb into bed, and close my eyes with a calm heart. I don't worry about tomorrow anymore, because I know whatever comes, I'll face it with the same quiet strength that got me this far. When my daughter said, "We don't need you anymore," I thought my story was ending. But now I see that was just the beginning of another one. A story about rediscovery, about peace, about a woman learning that even when the world grows smaller, the heart can still grow bigger. And maybe, just maybe, that's what independence truly means.